Hey, good morning. Welcome back. Today I'm going to spend a little more time in the book of James. I was in the book of James last week, and I'm going to probably be there again for a couple of weeks. It's a very important book in my spiritual walk. It's probably my favorite book of the Bible. It's a very blunt, very direct message to believers. And it's important that you understand that the audience for the book of James is it's believers. It's people that have confessed with their mouth and believe in their heart that Jesus is Lord. And if you don't understand that, some of the things in the book are not going to make sense. You have to understand that these are people that are already that have committed their lives, that are followers of Jesus Christ. And now God, through James, is speaking to these people about certain things, about things to do and not do, challenges, the way to handle yourself. There's all kinds of knowledge and depth. It's a really wonderful letter. And I would encourage you to read it. If you've read it before, read it again. It's just every time I get a little bit something different out of it. But the section I want to cover here is actually built into the piece where he's talking about not boasting about tomorrow. He said you shouldn't say that I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Say, God willing, I'm going to do that, because you don't know what tomorrow brings. Your life is a vapor, you're a mist, you're here today and you're gone tomorrow. So we shouldn't boast about where we're going to be in 3, 5, or 10 years, because we may not be here in 3, 5, or 10 years. But at the very end of that section, it states, if anyone then knows the good that they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is a sin for them. And this is a really interesting piece of scripture, because most of us think about sin like we got a pretty good grip on it. Shall not murder, shall not lie, lust, and it's just standard things that you think about. But what he's saying here is that inaction, when God calls you to do something, not listening to him, not following with the action he's calling you to do, in itself could be sinful. And it could be sinful for you, right? Because your specific situation is what God is speaking to. So as followers of Christ, we all have our different path. God has plans for all of us. We don't know exactly what he's doing. But what he's saying is, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do right now, then you're not going to get to where I need you to go, and you're not going to be effective in the ministry effort I have for you here on earth. And so this piece of scripture hit me well over 10 years ago, probably more like 12 years ago now, when I was in Denver, Colorado with my wife, and we lived out there. We had a good church family. We had a wonderful little condo that we rented, had a lot of good friends, both had jobs. Things were good. But Jen felt very convicted that we were to move to Gainesville, Florida, back to Florida from where we came. And I didn't handle it very well because I didn't really want to leave. But eventually I accepted the fact that this was God's will, that he was speaking through my wife and putting it on her heart, and she was communicating that to me. And in doing so, this verse was the one that kind of smacked me and said, all right, I got to go. Because it says, if anyone knows what they ought to do and doesn't do it, for them, it is a sin. It's actually a transgression to ignore the God of the universe and assume that it's okay for you not to take the path that he's directing you to take. Now, let me be crystal clear about something. He's not saying if you don't listen to me and you don't take this action, you're going to lose your salvation. Your salvation is set the moment you become a follower of Christ. There's absolutely nothing that could ever change that. But the experience that you're going to have with him on the other side when we get there is going to be hinged on how obedient we are on this side while we're here. And he says, I've got rewards. And that concept sounds weird to think about rewards in heaven. But if you think about it, like experiencing it to a higher degree, if you allow yourself here to be faithful with what he's telling you to do right now with these small things, it is going to amplify and echo throughout all eternity in heaven. If you don't, you're still, as a follower of Christ, you're still going to be there. It just won't have the same impact on you. So I would implore you to listen to your communication with God. Listen to that heart. Listen to what he's tugging on you to do or not do. And then be obedient and take that step, because you don't want to look back. We don't know how long we have, but we know eventually we're going to stand face to face. And he's got plans that are so much bigger than what we could possibly understand. And we can't see them, we don't know them, we don't understand them, but being faithful with those little things is going to allow God to work through us to be faithful in big things and really, really change the foundation of what's going on here. So an analogy, I think I might have used this in a micro sermon in the past, but it's a pretty good one. It's a guy named Stephen Armstrong that I read a lot, I listen to a lot, and I quote a lot. But his analogy was spot on. And he said, look, if you're on a sports team and you are being disobedient to the coach and he puts you on the bench and no longer plays you because of your actions or inactions and your disobedience, and a team goes on to win the championship, you still get the trophy because you're on the team, right? There's nothing that you can do that can take you off that team when you're talking about being on the team of Jesus, on his team. Salvation is set in your heart. There's nothing that the world can bring in front of you that would break that. But can you imagine winning a championship and watching it from the bench, knowing that you could have been on the field, being part of it and actually being, useful to the team and being, engaged? Or are you just going to sit there and watch it happen? And that's kind of what it's like for people that are being disobedient to God and the calling, is we're still going to be there, right? Our salvation is set. But he's saying it's sinful if you're not listening to me now because I've got big plans. But if you're not faithful with the little things, I can't trust you to be faithful with the big things. And if you think of your life kind of on a trajectory, certain things have to happen in order to get you to where you're going to go. Had I been sitting in Denver, Colorado, and been disobedient and not taking that step to move back to Gainesville, I would have never met a friend of mine that opened my eyes to certain truths, to kind of put me on my path to being the man from a spiritual perspective that I am today, giving me my ministry, my gift. I wouldn't have understood my gift and my calling, my purpose. All of that could have been diluted or completely lost. I still would have been with Christ when I leave this world, but I can't imagine getting to the other side and having him say, man, if you just would have listened to me back there in Denver, I had big things, but you had to take that action, right? You had to be faithful. And so I don't know what God's calling you to do, but I would implore you to go ahead and follow that calling, take the action. The world may think you're nuts. It may not make sense. You may think you're nuts sometimes, right? You may question what you're doing, but have faith in the one that's already in the future and the one that has predestined you for good works, which he planned beforehand to have you walk in them. So that's my message for today. We'll be back hopefully next week. I got way more in the book of James, widows and orphans, true religion, all kinds of stuff. It's just chock full of good stuff. So hopefully I'll see you next week. Until then, God bless you. Take care, and we'll talk soon.